Hello, everyone. So, I was born a single child in a home, looked after by two extremely loving parents who made sure they gave me everything that they could not have in their lives, which means everything was available to me as and when I wanted, everything was deterministic. Everything had to happen at the exact date, at the exact time, and at the exact moment that I had myself decided and written down on a piece of a long chart paper and pasted against the wall of my own study. And it had the chronology of events that I must follow in order to fulfill my dream of becoming a medical doctor. And I kept on thinking that probably that is the kind of chronology which I could control. Nothing could ever move out of that neat progression of events that I had designed for myself. I had begun to believe that probably life is deterministic and time is nothing but a linear progression of all those events. And it continued that way. It continued till the time I finished my pre-medical tests. But then, as usual, surprise, surprise. So I want to ask you all a question. Can any human life ever be exempted from the conflict or the challenge of the Frostian divergence of two roads diverging in a wood and he choosing the one less traveled by? I feel that little did Robert Frost knew, or maybe he did, how his idea of two roads diverging in a wood and he choosing the one less traveled by could provide something so central to human existence. My tryst with conflict came to me when I finally joined medical school. And I think my world fell apart because I did not end up liking medicine. That tight, neat ball that I had woven with a lot of chronological events just fell on the floor and broke into 1,000 pieces. And that is when I began to wonder, so what to do now? What to choose? Should I drop medicine? Should I choose something else? The possibility of choosing something else and taking that up felt so polarized at that point that I would wake up with that fear every single morning wrapped around my heart. And probably that is when destiny forced me with utmost desperation to pursue the reason behind and the purpose behind human conflict. And I kept on thinking that why does conflict exist? Uh, Today, when I look back as a transpersonal psychotherapist and probably less as a medical doctor, I feel that I could have also said and sighed like Frost that I chose the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. But in doing that, there is a fallacy, which I coin as the Frostan Fork fallacy. So when we choose something, we focus a lot on that choice. We don't focus on the other choice that was available to us, which could have been equally alluring. And at that moment, we also forget that even before I made the choice, the conflict was the beginning of that whole scheme of things. So I kept on wondering, why does conflict exist? Is it like a part of human psyche? Or is it like a regular eventuality like death, like crisis, like emergency, which could just come at any moment of time without any preamble? And although I guess my love for philosophy did provide me a lot of theories which I could, lovingly accept and take back to my grave, but I think it was my love for cosmology which finally gave me an idea that I'm going to share with you today about why conflict exists. So this idea is something that I call as the polarized Earth idea. So you know that Earth is a polarized planet, which means everything on Earth is in pair of opposites. High and low, you and me, light and dark, male and female. Everything is polarized. So if everything is polarized, everything is in pair of opposites, then there are two ends of a thing. These two ends are called extremities. And if there is extremities, then there is measurement. You can measure length, you can measure breadth, you can measure height. So you have dimensions. I am not including time here because, again, time is debated to be the fifth dimension along with space. And until and unless I and you are looking at our watches, we don't know what time it is. So I'm talking about the three dimensions that you perceive and the three-dimensional biological body that we have. And therefore, since there are extremities, there is also something in between these extremities. And what is that? That is variations. So as evolution proceeds from one extremity to the other extremities, every species is an improvisation of itself through variations. We know that variation is the seat of evolution. Variety is the seat of evolution. And as variety exists, evolution does. So we are the products of that same earthly evolution, which started with polarization. How can we be devoid of conflict? Polarizations exist, hence conflict does. It's because of polarizations, therefore we face this conflict. But while focusing on conflict as an evolutionary burden, we are missing out a point, and that is, if conflict did not exist, how would options exist? If options did not exist, how would choice exist? If choice didn't, how would free will exist? Although any neuroscientist sitting here, which I think is not, or any neuroscientist sitting in any part of the world would not accept this blatant autonomous idea of free will. They say that there is no free will, right? But what I'm trying to say is the perception that you have that I can choose this chair over that chair is my idea of free will. And that idea wouldn't have been there if conflict existed, if conflict didn't exist. So that's the idea of free will. And we go on focusing on the idea of free will so much more because free will provides us with power. Conflict does the opposite. When we can choose something over something else, we feel powerful. And conflict does the exact opposite. I'm going to explain this to you by an example. So I think most of my life in abroad while I was doing my master's, I guess, was spent in visiting Walmart and then deciding which milk to buy because there are 20 different varieties of milk. So there is hemp milk, there is soya milk, there is rice milk, there is fat-free milk, there is double-tone milk, single-tone milk, and whatnot. And you go there and you keep on wondering, okay, which milk to buy? So whether you have made the decision beforehand which milk you are going to buy, or whether you are making the decision after you reach the store, doesn't matter because you may give yourself 10 different reasons to do that. One of them could be, I want to lose weight, therefore I'm going to buy 2% fat-free milk. I want to gain weight, and I want to have delicious kheer, and therefore I'm going to have full cream milk. And at that moment, even though you have given all those conjectures to yourself, you may sigh, much like Robert Frost again, that, oh, I chose the milk that helped me lose weight, and that has made all the difference. I chose the milk which helped me make delicious kheer. At the same time, I gained weight, and that has made all the difference. So you could also do that. And at that time, you are not aware that you are using your free will and feeling so powerful about the fact that you could choose that option. It didn't matter that all those 20 choices existed. You could choose something, and that made you feel powerful. And that is what we call as the illusion of choice. And it is this illusion of choice which is used by, well, all ad agencies, all companies, all brands, all industries to guide us, to affect our free will. So they provide us with a lot of option, and then when we choose something, we feel powerful at that moment. And at that moment, we go back to Frostan Fork fallacy again, because while making the choice, we again forget that conflict was the first thing that existed on the first place and not the idea of free will. Hence, conflict is ubiquitous, it is pervasive, and it is the seat of all our experiences without exception. Conflict plays a catalytic role in every single decision that we make, and even in the consequences that emerge from our choices. Conflict is as real and as complex as karma, gravity, entropy. Someone talked about karma here today. Yes. So, well, it doesn't matter whether karma is a belief system, gravity is a practical reality, entropy is a law, that doesn't matter. What matters is conflict is an undeniable part of your collective consciousness which you cannot evade. Because if conflict did not exist in the first place, evolution wouldn't have been a possibility. And we as humans probably still boiling in some Heldian soup in some obscure mountain or sea. So that's the point about conflict. Now, at the same point of time, we don't want to face conflict. We defy conflict all the time. We don't want to become a part of these internal fights that happen everywhere. So you get up in the morning and then your voice goes like, should I go to gym? Should I exercise? Should I quit smoking? Should I eat vegan from today onwards? Should I drop my boyfriend? That's quite usual, I believe. So yeah, and you may like to imagine that at that moment, all these 10 different voices are emerging in your head. But in truth, these are your various sub-personalities, different personalities which are sprouting in your emotional internal landscape. And that makes me wonder that, is this the only purpose of conflict? To make us feel so choiceless, so miserable, to ravage our emotional landscape, to cause internal fights between all these subpersonalities and create a lot of chaos? Perhaps not. It was only in my 4th year that I finally understood that the fabric of no destiny could ever be devoid of conflict waiting to be discovered at its seams. My conflict came as a liberation to me from that tight-knit ball that I had done myself. It came as a reminder of the symphony of possibilities and the freedom of options that exist in our life, which makes our life so much more livable. It adds thrill to our life. It adds adventure to our life. And it is because I went through that experience in college, that's the reason I can say that I'm finally free to choose whatever I want at any given moment of time. So if you and I could set apart our judgments about the consequences that emerge from our decisions and our choices, we could begin to look at conflict in a completely different light, maybe more as a reminder of our choices, possibilities, and opportunities, and less as a cause of our misery and suffering. I'm sure in the end, when Robert Frost went to grave, he went with the knowledge that the greatest satisfaction of human life doesn't lie in choosing the road less traveled by, but in facing that conflict and finally understanding that you are free to choose anything at any given moment of your life. Thank you.